Hi friends, today we're going to work on our vocabulary for our new story, Schools Around the World. Okay, so our first vocabulary word is culture. Culture is the traditions and beliefs of a group of people. So our motion for culture is you're going to put your hands on your heart and you're going to put tradition, or you're going to say tradition shared by a people, because culture can be the food, the clothes, the songs, anything like that, of a shared group of people. So culture, traditions shared by people. Okay? The next word is community. A community is a group of people who live together in a certain area. So for community, we're going to say the people around you. Ready? Community. The people around you. So, because though the sentence does say that a community is a group of people who live together, you can also have a community of people, like our school is a community, our class is a community. So community is the people who are around you. So culture, traditions shared by a people, community, people who are around you. All right, languages. People use different languages to write and speak to one another. So for languages, we're just going to go like this. Languages. Because that's something you speak. It's also something you write. But for our terms of our motion, we're going to say speak. Or do speaking. So we have culture, traditions shared by a people, communities, the people around you, and languages. All right, transportation is our fourth one. It's a big one. Transportation. People use transportation to get from one place to another. So transportation can be a plane, a bus, a car, a bike, your feet. Not really, but it's those kinds of things that you use to get from one place to another. So transportation, we're going to pretend we're driving. Transportation. So we have culture, traditions shared by people, community, the people around you, languages, and transportation. Subjects. Science is one of the subjects taught in school. Now, subjects is a little trickier to have a motion for, but subjects are the things you study, right? So you're going to pretend you have a book, and we're going to say subjects, things you study. Ready? Subjects, things you study. So we have culture, traditions shared by people, community, the people around you, languages, transportation, and subjects, things you study. All right, number 6 is lessons. This teacher gives lessons to his students. The students learn from each lesson. Okay, so lessons are things that are taught, right? So you're going to pretend you're teaching, and you're going to say lessons, things that are taught. Lessons, things that are taught. So we have community, we have culture, traditions shared by people. We have community, the people around you. We have languages. We have transportation. We have subjects, things you study. And we have lessons, things that are taught. Okay, so that. All right, number 7 is special. These students go to a special school for music. They play music every day. Okay, so special, we're going to, say that we're going to make a heart with our hands and we're going to say it's unique. So special, unique. Special, unique. So we have culture, traditions shared by people, community, the people around you, languages, transportation, subjects, things you study, lessons, things that are taught, special, unique. All right, so we just have one more. Wear. These two students wear uniforms at school. So this is kind of the wear like what you do with your clothes, not when you're like, oh, where is my book? Different kind of wear. So for wear, you're just going to put up your clothes, whatever shirt you're wearing. You're going to say wear. Ready? So let's try all of them. So we have culture, traditions shared by a people, community, people around you, languages, transportation, subjects, things you study, lessons, things that are taught, special, it's unique, and where. Okay, so let's talk about the definitions for those words. So we have transportation, the ways of getting from one place to place. So like I said, bus, train, car, bike, those are things of transportation. Community, all the people living in one town or place. And again, we also talked about how you can build a community in your class or your school. Lesson, something that is taught. Subjects, different things to study in school. Culture, the clothes, celebrations, and food shared by a group of people. Languages, what people speak. You can also write languages, of course. Special, a way that is not like every day, so unique. And wear, to be dressed in type of clothes, right? So that's what you're wearing. So now it is time to do our triggers. So grab a piece of paper and a pencil so we can do our triggers together. Move some of this stuff out of the way. All right, so remember with our triggers, you want to fold your piece of paper like a hamburger or horizontally twice. Give it a good crease so that when we unfold it, you're going to have 4 squares on the front and 4 squares on the back. So 1 square for each of our vocabulary words. All right. So with our triggers, remember we often use different kinds of triggers for each word. So we're going to start just in order, and we're going to start with our word culture. Now with culture, we're going to use our equation trigger, which I always like to kind of label them so we remember what we're using. So we're going to use our equation trigger. So that's where you say something plus something else equals our vocabulary word. So we could say that someone's beliefs plus their traditions equals culture. Right? So if you have beliefs and traditions, together that equals someone's culture. All right? So something you might think of, food is really, really big in Italy. I mean, it's big in a lot of places, but I feel like food is a big part of their culture there. So we could say food plus Italy equals culture. If you think of something locally, you could say things that make kind of like our culture. So we could say West Virginia plus, let's just go food as well. Let's say pepperoni rolls. Obviously, there's a lot more to our culture than pepperoni rolls, but just for the sake of our triggers. So West Virginia plus pepperoni rolls is culture, right? Because that's a big part of our traditions around the state and things like that. So remember with equations, you have 2 pieces together that come together to make the vocabulary word. All right, the next one we're going to do is community. Feel free to do the motions when we're reviewing these. And we're going to use our analogy trigger. Remember, our analogy trigger is like a bridge map that we do, right? We just don't write the relating factor like we do with a bridge map. So, thinking of locally, so think of our local community. Let's do the community of Fairmont. So we could say that East Side is the East community, right? Because they go to the same schools, live in the same area. So that's a big part of their community. As West Side is the West community. Same thing. They live and work in the same areas and go to the same school. So that's really how you build a community. Often it's that shared educational space or that shared physical living space. So think of East and West Side of Fairmont. All right, so let's do languages now, and we're just going to do examples, our examples trigger. And we're just going to write examples of languages. So thinking of, well, we speak English, but there's a lot of languages on Earth. So there's also Spanish, French, German, Chinese. There's actually a couple different, it's called dialects, when there's different ways to kind of speak these different languages. You have Italian. You have Russian. And you have Japanese. Now there are tons and tons of different languages, because even within these different languages there are, like I said, different dialects, which means slightly different ways that they speak it. So thinking about English, if you think about not just accents, but you think about how people in different parts of our state or people who live in different countries that also speak English might have different phrases. Like how we have a phrase like a couch potato, meaning someone's lazy. There's just things like that. So there's little nuances and things that are different in languages. So that's just something to think about. All right, our next word is going to be transportation. Big long word, transportation, transportation. All right, and we're also going to use an analogy trigger for this as well. And we're going to show different ways or different kinds of transportation and where they are, what they're used for. So for example, a bus takes you to school. Like a car might take you to the store. Like a horse might be on a trail, if you've ever ridden a horse. Or a rocket ship might take you to space, in space. All right, so these are different kinds of transportation, ways that you get from place to place, and there are different kinds of transportation that can also take you to different places. Now, of course, bus and car can take you different places. A bus can take you to a field trip. A bus, if you're using a public bus, could take you to the store, things like that. But that's just the example that we are using for our triggers. All right, so now we're going to flip it over to the other side, and we're going to start with subjects. Now, for our subjects vocabulary word, we're going to use an acrostic trigger. And remember, this is our acrostic poem where we use the different letters of the word to make other words. And you can use the beginning of the word, you can use the letter in the middle of the word. All right, and something that we like to do is make our middle word a different color. Of course, if you're using a pencil, it doesn't have to be a different color. It just helps you really see the original word. And using a different color, let me use a completely different color for the words that we come up with. So let's just think of some subjects that start with these letters or have these letters in them. Well, we think of S we can use for science. That's a subject we study in school. We have music. Another subject we study in school. Something you'll study, we introduce a little bit without calling it this, but something you'll specifically study when you get older is biology. It's a kind of science that has to do with life. You can study different subjects in order to get you a different job. So different subjects that you'll study will get you different jobs or will send you toward a different job. For E, we could use mathematics. Not normally, we just abbreviate it. We'll never abbreviate it, but cut it down and call it math. Well, we could use mathematics. That's a subject in school that we study. And where do you study these subjects often? School. And so we can use that for our C. You can use a variety of objects when you're studying different subjects. And I think of, in math, different equations. So that's in a subject that we study. So remember, with our acrostics, you use the main word in the middle and things that relate to the original vocabulary word. You could, as long as you can justify, you can use whatever word you feel like works best, but you have to be able to justify why it makes sense to that word, right? Like if I just had objects, I have to justify that you use these objects when studying different subjects, right? So you have to justify why it's in there. All right, so let's do lessons. All right, and we're going to do an equation trigger for this as well. Let's be a bit repetitive so we can get some good practice with them, the different kinds. So remember, something plus something equals our vocabulary word. Well, I think of students learning a lesson, right? So students plus learn equals lesson. On the other hand, a teacher will teach it. So teacher plus taught, we'll say taught, just to make it a different word, which is the past tense of teach, taught. So teacher plus taught equals lesson. Something we do with our reading is reading plus phonics, right? So we have our phonics lesson. So that would be a good way to say lesson. And remember, anytime we're doing these triggers, if you think of something else you want to add, you go right ahead, as long as you can justify to yourself. All right, for special, we're also going to do examples. The examples trigger. Ooh, almost got that on my table. And you're just going to think of examples of things that are special. I think Eastdale is pretty special. I think you're very special, but we're going to write me because it's on your map. You can say me, you're very special. I think pets are special. I think family is really special. I think kids are really special, right? Obviously, I'm in a profession, and I think you guys are really special. So any other example, things you think are special. And for our last word, where, we're going to use a different trigger. We're going to do a sketch, which remember, our sketch trigger is just a picture that relates. And you're going to draw a stick person. It can be whatever kind of stick person you want. A boy stick person, a girl stick person, whatever you want. Whoops. Hands look a little funky. So I'm going to have some curly hair on my stick figure, right? All right. Color that in a little bit. And you have to make sure that you point to the part of the picture that you're talking about. So where, we're talking about the clothes that we're putting on our stick figure. So that's the part that we'll put. And let's be even more specific and let's put wear clothes. Just to really, really show our brains that that's what we're talking about. All right, kiddos, so those are our vocabulary words for this story. So as you reread through the week, as you listen to my read aloud, if you have not already, look for those words, think about the motions, and think about what they mean, and try to use them kind of in context. That means how they are just supposed to be used normally. All right, as always, friends, have a great rest of your day. Work hard and just always do your best. Bye, friends.